Hi friends, welcome to our YouTube channel Nagaraj Academy. The main aim of this lecture is to discuss about the ISRO 2017 W solutions in a very detailed manner. And if you like the content of our channel, then please do like, share and subscribe our YouTube channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon button, so whenever we upload a new video, the direct notifications comes on mobile. If any improvements needed in our video lectures, then please do comment in the comment section. We will definitely include all those improvements in the coming lectures. So why to waste more time? So let's get started. So now we are going to solve the 71st question. See the question here. In the Taylor series expansion of e to the power of x plus sin x about the point x is equal to pi, the coefficient of x minus pi whole square. So in this question they have given a function f of x is equal to e to the power of x plus sin x. So at the point x is equal to pi, then we have to find what is the value of the coefficient of the x minus pi whole square. We need to figure out. So out of these four options, option B is the correct solution of this question, which is 0.5 into e to the power of x is the correct solution of this question. So let's solve this numerical. So the Taylor series expansion of f of x at a point x naught is f of x naught plus x minus x naught by 1 factorial into f dash of x naught plus x minus x naught whole square by 2 factorial f double dash of x naught, and goes on. So therefore now here this is the function f of x. We are going to equate it to a small amount of linear function. Here this is the function is going to only satisfied at the value of the x naught. So in this question they are given f of x is equal to e to the power of x plus sin x, and also they are given at x naught is equal to pi. We have to find what is the value of the coefficient of the x minus pi whole square. So if you want the coefficient of x minus pi whole square, here the coefficient will be f double dash of x naught by 2 factorial. Means we need to find what is the coefficient of the value of f double dash of pi by 2 factorial. So this is the value we need to figure out. So in order to do this one, we have to find the double derivative, and then we have to substitute in place of x. We have to substitute the value of pi, and then we have to figure out the value of the f double dash of pi. So this is the f of x is equal to e to the power of x plus sin x. So therefore f dash of x is equal to e to the power of x differentiation is same thing, e to the power of x, and the sin differentiation is cos x. Again we are going to go for the another differentiation, which is f double dash of x is equal to e to the power of x differentiation is same, which is e to the power of x, and cos x differentiation is minus sin x. So this is the f double dash of x. So now here we have to replace x by pi. So therefore now we are going to get here, in place of x we are going to replace by pi. We are going to get e to the power of pi minus sin pi. Sin pi is 0. So therefore e to the power of pi minus 0 is nothing but e to the power of 5. So therefore we got the value of the f double dash of pi. So substitute here, we are going to get e to the power of pi by 2 factorial. So 2 factorial is 2 into 1, which is 2. So 1 by 2 is nothing but 0.5 into e to the power of pi. So therefore 0.5 into e to the power of pi is the correct solution of this question. So therefore we can conclude that the coefficient of x minus pi whole square is 0.5 into e to the power of pi is the correct solution of this question. Now we are going to solve the 72nd question. See the question here. If the gain of an open loop system is double, the gain margin will. Suppose if the gain of an open loop system is double, then what is the value of the gain margin? So out of these four options, option C, it becomes half. Half is the correct solution of this question. So option C is the correct solution of this question. So let's solve this numerical. So now here the gain margin is defined as it is the inverse of the gain of the open loop system at omega pc, which is called as the phase cos over frequency. At this frequency, whatever the gain, we have to go for the inverse, then we are going to get the gain margin. So in this question they are given the gain margin is increased. So the open loop gain was increased by 2 times. Then what is the effect on the gain margin, we are going to figure out. So here now I am going to take it here, gm1 by gm2 is equal to, initially I am going to assume the gain is k, and the second time the gain was increased by 2 times. So therefore we can say this is 2k. So 1 by k by 1 by 2k. If you do the division, we are going to get 1 by k into 2k by 1, which is k get cancels, so it is equal to 2. So gain margin 2 is equal to half of the gain margin 1. So therefore whenever the gain was increased by 2 times, we can conclude that the gain margin became half. So therefore half is the correct solution of this question. So now we are going to solve the 73rd question. See the question here. Which of the following methods is the strongest tool to determine the stability and the transient response of the system? So out of these four options, option D is the correct solution of this question, which is the root locus. So root locus is the correct solution of this question. So let's discuss something more about this one. So now we discuss some of the important facts regarding the root locus, Bode plot, Nyquist plot and the Routh-Hurwitz criterion. So basically for a root locus, it can easily figure out the stability and also it can tell you about the transient response based on the location of the, it is going to tell you about the exact location of the pole and zero. And also it can tell you about the relative stability of a system. So with the help of root locus, we can easily figure out the exact location of the poles and also zeros. So by this we can easily figure out the what is the transient response, what is the nature, whether it is exponentially increasing or decreasing. Whenever all the poles are going to lie only in the LHS of S-plane, then we can say the system is said to be a stable system, because the transients are going to die out as the time goes on, and finally the final output is going to reach the desired input. So we can say here the root locus is going to tell you the exact pole zero location, and also it is going to tell you whether a system is stable or not, and also it can tell you about the relative stability regarding the stable systems, and also it can tell you about the transient response based on the pole location. So therefore again the Bode plot. So Bode plot is going to tell you about the gain and also phase of LTI systems, their nature from omega is equal to 0 to omega is equal to infinity. See, what is the nature of the gain and phase of LTI system whenever we are going to change the frequencies from omega is equal to 0 to omega is equal to infinity, then what is the change of magnitude and also the phase. Whereas for the Nyquist plot, we are going to tell you about the stability and also relative stability of stable systems, and also we can tell you about the instability of the unstable systems. All these things we can figure out with the help of the Nyquist plot. And with the help of Routh's criteria, here we are going to find the range of gain k in order to become a system to be stable. And also here we can tell you the information regarding the location of poles, but not the exact location of a poles. It can only tell you where a pole can lie, whether it can be LHS or RHS, but it doesn't tell you what is the exact location of a poles. So if you don't know the exact location of poles, then definitely you don't know the exact nature of the transient response. But in a root locus, you know the exact position of the poles and zeros, then we can know what is the exact nature of the transient response, whether it is under damped or critical damped or over damped. And then also we can figure out what is the steady state value with the help of the stable system. If the stable system, then definitely it is going to have some steady state value, otherwise we can say it is an unstable system. So all these things, the transient response and also stable or unstable, all these things we can only figure out with the help of the root locus. So therefore root locus is the correct solution of this question. So now we are going to solve the 74th question. See the question here. A system with characteristic equation s to the power of 4 plus 2 s to the power of q plus 11s square plus 18s plus 18 is equal to 0 will have the closed loop pole such that. So in this question they are given a characteristic equation, and then they are going to asking about the what is the nature of the closed loop poles, whether in what axis they are going to lie. So out of all these options, option C is the correct solution of this question, which is the two poles lie symmetrically on the imaginary axis of the S-plane. So let's solve this numerical. So basically this is the question they are given. It is a characteristic equation. So based on this characteristic equation, we have to comment on the nature of the poles, on what axis they are going to lie. So the first thing is here you have to write in this order, which is s to the power of 4, s to the power of 3, s to the power of 10, s to the power of 1 and s to the power of 0. And the first two rows you have to fill based on this characteristic equation. Say s to the power of 4, the coefficient is 1, and then you have to go for the s square, the coefficient is 11, and then s to the power of 0 coefficient is 18. For this s cube, we have to go for the coefficient is 2, and for s to the power of 1, the coefficient is 18, and the remaining one is 0. So based on this data, based on these two rows, then we have to fill the remaining values in this column. So therefore now here I want to find what is the value of this one. So therefore 2 into 11 minus 1 into 18 by 2. So 2 into 11 minus 18 by 2, which is nothing but 22 minus 18 by 2 is called as a 4 by 2, which is 2. So 2 is here. If you want to find this value, then you have to go for the 2 into 18 minus 1 into 0 by 2. Then we are going to get 18. So therefore this is the value of 18. And now if you do the same procedure here, we are going to get the value of 0 and 0. So whenever there is a one full row, if it is 0, then definitely the above equation is called as the auxiliary equation. Means with this we can't move forward. So if you want to move forward, then definitely the above equation is called as the auxiliary equation, which is auxiliary equation is equal to 2a square plus 18. So now you have to go for the derivative of this auxiliary equation. Then you are going to get 4s plus 0. So 4s plus 0. See, whatever these coefficients you have got, you have to fill in this column. So therefore in this row you have to fill. The first coefficient is 4. So 0 must be replaced by 4, and here the another coefficient is 0. So same as this one, 0. So based on this, now you have to fill the remaining columns in this matrix. So therefore now in this one, so therefore we can conclude that if you want this value, then you have to go for the 4 into 18 minus 2 into 0 by 4. So you are going to get 18. So here you have to write 18. So if you see carefully, there are no sign changes in the first column. So we can conclude that there is not even one pole lying in the RHS of S plane. See, the number of sign changes in the first column is going to tell you the number of rows which are going to lie in the RHS of S plane. So based on this here, as there is no sign change, we can conclude that not even one pole is going to present in the RHS of S plane. So now I have to equate the auxiliary equation is equal to 0. Then we are going to tell you about the nature of the roots, whether they are going to lie on the imaginary axis or not. We are going to get the nature. So now you have to equate the equation to 0. Then we are going to get 2s square plus 18 is equal to 0. So if you take 2 as a common, we are going to get s square plus 9 is equal to 0. So therefore s square is equal to minus 9. So if you take the root, we are going to get s is equal to plus or minus j under root over 3. So we can say the two roots are going to lie on the imaginary axis. Simple roots are going to lie on the imaginary axis. So therefore we can conclude that as two poles are going to lie on the imaginary axis, and the order of this equation is 4. So therefore the remaining two poles are going to lie in the LHS of S plane, because not even there is no sign change. So definitely there is no root on the RHS, means the remaining poles should definitely lie on the LHS of S plane. So therefore two poles are going to lie on the imaginary axis and the two poles are going to lie on the LHS of S plane. So we can say the system is said to be a marginally stable because there are simple poles are present on the imaginary axis. So we can conclude that the system is said to be a marginally stable system. So now we are going to solve the 75th question. See the question here. Resistance switching is normally employed in. So the resistance switching is normally going to employed in which type of circuit breaker? So out of these four options, option D, air blast circuit breaker is the correct solution of this question. So let's solve this question. So now we'll discuss something about the air blast circuit breaker. So air blast circuit breaker is also called as the air circuit breaker. So therefore now here there is a power system transmission line with a inductance and a capacitance. Suppose there is a fault is occurring at a load, or we can say if there is any fault occurring in a power system, then definitely a huge amount of current is going to pass through that line. So we have to remove this current. So we have to remove this line because of huge amount of current. So therefore we can protect the load. So therefore now the circuit breaker is going to open the lines. The circuit breaker is going to open the lines. Suppose if you are going to open the line, even if the natural occurrence of current is 0, that method is called as a current chopping. See, we are going to open the circuit breaker even when that natural occurrence of 0 in the current. So if you are opening the line before the natural occurrence of 0 of a current, then we say it is called as a current chopping. So therefore in the current chopping, if you are removing this line before the natural occurrence of current 0, then a huge amount of current, or we can say a spark, is going to occur between the contacts. So we have to reduce these contacts, or we can say we have to reduce the amount of spark between the contacts of circuit breaker. So for this we are going to use an external resistor. This resistor we are going to connect in a shunt manner with respect to the contacts of circuit breaker. So because of this, a small amount of the extra current can pass through this resistor. So therefore now a small amount of arc can only produced because of across the circuit breaker. See, if you are going to connect a shunt resistor, now the arc is going to split into two parts. Some amount of current can pass through this resistor, and also some amount of arc is going to pass through these contacts, because here is going to act like a now connector because of huge amount of charges. But now because of this method, what is going to happen is the restriking voltage, in order to make the new arc, is going to get reduced. So because of this resistor, the voltage across the contacts is going to reduce. So therefore this voltage is not even sufficient to make an arc. So therefore we can say R is used to damp the over voltage transients due to current chopping. Means this resistor is going to decrease the voltage across the contacts in such a way, so therefore it is not going to able to make a more amount of arc between the contacts. It is not able to further make an arc between the contacts. So this is the useful of the resistor, or we have to connect in parallel with respect to the contacts of circuit breaker. So this is basically used in a air blast circuit breaker, or we can say it is a air circuit breaker. And if you want to know what is the critical value of resistor, this much amount of critical value we have to use in order to make it is a critical damped system is the transients, means the, we can say the voltage, the restriking voltage across the circuit breaker in a exponential increase manner, which is 1 by 2 into under root over L by C, where L is the inductance of the line and C is the capacitance of this line. So therefore, if you want to know what is the voltage across the circuit breaker contacts, or it is also called as the switching voltage, which is I into under root over L by C, this is the voltage which is going to induce across the contacts of circuit breaker whenever you are going to open the line. So now we are going to solve the 76th question. See the question here. If the torque angle delta increases indefinitely, the system indicates, means the torque angle is also called as a power angle. If the value of delta is increasing very high, then what is the nature? What the nature of the system we are going to figure out. So out of these four options, option C, instability is the correct solution of this question. So let's solve this question. So now suppose we are going to connect a synchronous motor to a infinite bus. So basically for infinite bus, the voltage is going to remain constant. Suppose I am going to connect the synchronous motor to infinite bus, and then for the synchronous motor I am going to connect a load. So the synchronous motor is going to take the supply from the infinite bus, and then it is going to rotate. So here the speed of rotation of the shaft is ns. So ns is called as the synchronous speed. Here for a synchronous motor, the rotor speed and also the flux rotating is also both are equal, which is equal to ns. So now delta is called as the power angle, the torque angle. It is the angle between the rotor flux and the stator flux. So both the rotor flux and the stator flux are going to rotate in the same direction with the speed of ns, and the angle between these flux is called as the delta. So when this delta, suppose I am going to increase the load, suppose if I am going to increase the load in a gradual manner, until the gradual manner, say up to a certain limit, the motor can rotate with speed ns. Suppose if you are going to increase the load more and more, then definitely this motor is not going to able to maintain its speed. So therefore its speed is going to get decreased. So we can say these two, the rotor flux and stator flux, are not in synchronism to each other. If they are not in synchronism to each other, means the speed is going to get decreased. So we can say finally the motor is going to remain at zero speed. So therefore whenever the load is going to increase, then we can say the angle between the rotor flux and stator flux is going to get increased. Whenever it is going to increase more than a critical value, see up to a critical value it can maintain that load. So therefore the load can rotate at ns speed. But if it is more than that angle, then definitely the speed will become zero. So therefore we can say when this value goes on increasing and increases, then definitely we can say the motor is going to get stopped. It means we can simply say it is an unstable system. So therefore whenever the delta is lesser than the delta max, or we can say up to that value, the system can able to become stable, means it can rotate with speed ns. Suppose if delta is equal to delta max, means the critical value, we can say the machine is going to get oscillate. And suppose if the delta is greater than delta max, means it is more than the critical value, means there is no synchronism between the rotor flux and stator flux. So therefore we can say finally this rotor is going to become a speed of zero. It is can't able to rotate the load. So therefore we can say the motor is going to become stop position, or we can say it is a simple unstable system. See, as the value of delta goes on increases, then definitely the system stability will decrease, or we can say simply unstable system or unstable system. So now we are going to solve the 77th question. See the question here. The equal area criteria of stability is applicable to. So the equal area criteria of stability is going to applicable to. So out of these four options, option B is the correct solution of this question, which is one machine system and the infinite bus bars. So now we'll discuss the solution. So basically in power system we are going to study the two things, which are called as the steady state stability analysis and also transient state stability analysis. See here, for the steady state stability analysis means, suppose for a power system we are going to provide a small amount of disturbance, then what is the nature of the effect on the power system? So regarding that study is called as the steady state stability, means a small amount of disturbance we are going to make to the system, and then we are going to study the variations in the power system. For a transient state stability means we are going to produce a large amount of disturbance for a system. Suppose like short circuit on a system, or we can say even a generation was off, so we are going to make a large amount of disturbance for this system. See, whatever these equations in the power system we are going to get for large disturbance are non-linear equations. So in order to solve this non-linear equations, we are going to use a graphical method. The graphical method is called as the equal area criteria. So with the help of equal area criteria, we can solve this nonlinear equations in a graphical manner, and then we can see what is the nature inside them. So basically here, because of these large disturbances, we are going to see what is the variation of the delta, whether it is going to come back to its original steady state value or not. All these things we are going to see in this transient state stability analysis. So here in this equal area criteria, definitely I have already told you, whenever the delta is lesser than delta critical, then only we can say here both are in the synchronous nature. So there the synchronism is still maintained. So we can say the system is said to be a stable system. If delta is nearly equal to delta critical, means say that the system is said to be an oscillatory system. But if delta is greater than delta critical, means there is no synchronism. So because of the synchronism is lost, then we can say the system is said to be an unstable system. So all these things, the critical values we can easily figure out with the help of equal area criteria. It is basically a graphical method. So finally here we can say that this is nothing but this equal area criteria is going to apply for the transient stability limit, or we can say for transient stability analysis we are going to this approach in order to do for the approach of the single machine infinite bus system. So we are going to use this study only for the single machine with the infinite bus system. So because of this nature of equal area criteria, we can figure out the delta critical. If the delta is going to lie within this delta critical, then we can say the system is said to be stable. Otherwise the system is unstable system. So now we are going to solve the 70th question. See the question here. Two transformers connected in parallel share load in the ratio of their kVA ratings provided their ohmic impedances are. So out of these options, option C is the correct solution of this question, which is inverse ratio of the ratings. Means the transformers are going to share the load in proportional to the kVA ratings whenever, or we can say these are inversely proportional to their impedances. So now we'll solve this question. So this is the secondary side of the transformers of two transformers T1 and T2. They have to induce the same amount of voltage. The first transformer secondary has an impedance of Z1, and the secondary transformer means second transformer has an impedance of Z2 across the secondary. So these two are going to share a load is going to have some complex power of SL, and the load voltage is VL, and the current taken by the load is IL. So now the current shared by the first transformer secondary is I1, and the current shared by the second transformer secondary is I2. So based on this here, how much amount of complex power shared by the transformer 1 and the transformer 2 in order to meet the load demand SL. So the basic formula here, S1 is equal to the complex power shared by the transformer 1 to meet the SL is called as this Z2 by Z1 plus Z2 whole conjugate SL. So if you want to know what is the complex power shared by the second transformer, which is S2 is equal to Z1 by Z1 plus Z2 whole conjugate SL. So if you do the division of S1 and S2, we are going to get Z2 by Z1 whole conjugate. But I want to know what is these are the complex values, but I want to know what is the magnitude value. Then take the magnitude of S1 by magnitude of S2 is equal to magnitude of Z2 by magnitude of Z1. So we can say here these are inversely proportional. So therefore magnitude of S is inversely proportional to magnitude of Z. So we can say the amount of complex power transferred to the load is inversely proportional to its impedance. Means we can say if the transformer is going to have, suppose this transformer has minimum impedance, means this transformer can share maximum amount of complex power to the load. Suppose if its impedance is higher, means this can share a small amount of power to the load. Suppose this is 10 watts. Suppose your example is 10 VA we want from here. Suppose Z1 is lesser than Z2, means it can share maximum when compared to second one. So therefore let me assume it can share 8 VA and this can share 2 VA. So therefore we can say here if Z1 is lesser than Z2, then it is going to share more when compared to the secondary in order to meet the load demand. So therefore we can say whichever the transformer having minimum impedance, it can share huge amount of complex power to the load. So therefore these are inversely proportional. So now we are going to solve the 79th question. See the question here. Assuming constant transmission efficiency, if the voltage is increased by n times, then the size of the conductor will be. Suppose if you are going to assume the constant efficiency, then if the voltage is increased by n times, then what is the nature on the, or we can say the size of the conductor. So out of all these options, option A is the correct solution of this question, which is reduced by 1 by n squared times that of the original. So option A is the correct solution of this question. So let's solve this numerical. So this is a single phase diagram of a power system. So this is the generator, and this is the resistance of the power transmission line, and this is a load. So load is going to have a voltage of V, and the current is taken by the load is I, and the power factor of the load is cos phi. So based on this, here the amount of power received by the load is equal to Vi cos phi. So I want the value of I. So I is equal to P by V cos phi. So the amount of power loss in this transmission line is equal to PL is equal to I square into R. So therefore PL is equal to I square into R. In place of I am going to substitute this value, which is P by V cos phi whole square into R. So if you do this one, we are going to get P square into R by V square cos square phi. But R is called as the resistance of the line. So resistance is nothing but rho L by A. So rho L by A. So now I am going to take A here. So therefore PL I am going to take down, and A I am going to take in the upward. So therefore I am going to get A is equal to P square rho L by V square cos square PL. So here A is called as the area of the conductor, and V is called as the voltage across the load. So therefore area is inversely proportional to square of the voltage. So volume is nothing but area into length, means volume is directly proportional to area. So therefore we can say, and the area is proportional to 1 by V square. So finally we can say volume is inversely proportional to, so volume of a conductor is inversely proportional to square of the supply voltage whole square, or the load voltage whole square. So from this we can say, here suppose the voltage is increased by n times, means volume 1 by volume 2 is equal to 1 by V square by, and the voltage is increased by n times, means 1 by NV whole square. So if you do the simplification, we are going to get volume 2, means new volume is equal to 1 by n square times the old volume. So therefore whenever the voltage is increased by n times, then we are going to get a volume which is 1 by n square times the volume 1, means the volume is going to decrease by n square. So if we increase the voltage by n times, we can say the size of the conductor, or the volume of the conductor, is going to reduce by 1 by n square times, means we are going to get a less size, or which we can say the less size of conductors are going to used if you increase the voltage. So this is the correct solution of this question. So now we are going to solve the last question of this lecture, and also the last question of this playlist. So see the question here. An all pass network imparts only. So an all pass network is going to imparts only. So out of these 4 options, option D is the correct solution of this question, which is plus or minus 180 degree phase shift to the input. Means it can go from plus 180 degrees to minus 180 degrees. It can covers each and every range of phase angle. Means it can provide the positive phase shift and also negative phase shift from plus 180 to minus 180 is the correct solution of this question. So let's solve this numerical. So now I will discuss about the 2 circuits regarding the all pass filter, and then I am going to tell you circuit 1 is going to tell you about it is going to cover about the negative phase shifts, and for the second circuit is going to cover all the positive shift. And then if you combine both of things, it can cover from positive and also negative. So circuit 1, this is the circuit 1 here. The circuit is called as the all pass filter. So here there are resistor R1, and here is R, and it's a capacitor C. So basically it is a negative feedback, because we are going to give output and the negative, or we can say inverting terminal, we have given a feedback. So it is called as the negative feedback. So therefore now here in the negative feedback circuit, always this voltage V and VB. So we are going to say this is the negative terminal voltage and the positive terminal voltage. These both are going to nearly virtual short circuit, means they are going to equal voltages. So now here VA is equal to VB. So VA is equal to VI into R1 plus V0 into R1 by R1 plus R1. So this is the equation we are going to get, and if we solve this one, we are going to get VI plus V0 by 2, and VB is equal to VI into 1 by SC by R plus 1 by SC. So VB is equal to VI into 1 by SC by R plus 1 by SC. So if you solve this one, we are going to get VI by 1 plus RC. So in a negative feedback circuit, always these 2 voltages are going to be equal because of virtual short circuit concept. So VI is equal to VB. So I am going to equate these 2 things. So if we equate these 2 equations, and if we rearrange, we are going to get finally V0 by Vi is called as the 1 minus SRC by 1 plus SRC. So V0 by Vi is called as the output by input voltage, it is called as the gain. So what is the gain of the this all pass filter circuit. So therefore ACL is called as the gain of the output by input. So in place of S I am going to substitute j omega. So therefore 1 minus j omega RC by 1 plus j omega RC. So this is nothing but it is in the terms of the rectangular format. So therefore I want to convert in terms of the polar format, magnitude and also the phase angle. So magnitude of 1 plus omega RC whole square with a phase angle of minus tan inverse omega RC, and this one is also converting to polar format. So the magnitude value is 1 plus omega RC whole square, omega RC whole square, and then we are going to take the angle part, tan inverse of omega RC. So therefore these are same, so these are going to get cancels. So finally I am going to get, if this angle is goes upward, it is going to get negative. So finally I am going to get ACL is equal to 1 into minus 2 tan inverse of omega RC. See, this is the, we can say, overall gain of this circuit. So no matter whatever the input, it is not going to affect the magnitude value, but it is going to only add the phase value. So therefore we can say for omega lies between 0 to infinity. Suppose if omega is equal to 0, if you substitute here, we are going to get 1 at an angle of 0 degree. Suppose if you substitute omega is equal to infinity, so tan inverse of infinity is nothing but pi by 2. So pi by 2 into minus 2 is nothing but minus pi, means minus 180 degree. So therefore we can say here, whenever the omega is changing from 0 to infinity, see the magnitude value is still 1, but it is the phase value changes from 0 to minus 180 degree. So if you draw the plot of this diagram, the magnitude of the closed loop gain is 1 for all the frequencies, but the phase angle is going to change from 0 degree to minus 180 degree if you are going from omega is equal to 0 to infinity. So we can say this all pass filter will does not changes the magnitude of the input, but it is going to add externally a phase shift of 0 to minus 180 degree for this circuit. So now we will discuss about the other circuit of all pass filter. So now we are going to solve the other circuit. This circuit is also called as the all pass filter. Just we interchange the capacitor and resistor of the previous circuit, then we got this circuit same as the previous one, just we replace the R with C and C with R. So therefore now here it is also a negative feedback circuit, because we are going to take the output and also we are going to give here for non-inverting terminal. So it is a negative feedback circuit. So therefore we can say here V and VB voltages are equal, because it's a virtual short circuit concept for the negative feedback circuit. So VA is equal to VI into R1 plus V0 into R1 by R1 plus R2. So if you solve this one same as the previous one, we are going to get VI plus V0 by 2, and VB is equal to VI into R by R plus 1 by SC by voltage division principle. So VB is equal to VI into R by R plus 1 by SC. If you solve this one, we are going to get VI into SRC by SRC plus 1. So therefore by negative feedback circuit, VA must be equal to VB with the help of virtual short circuit. So therefore we can say VA is equal to VB. So VA value substitute here and VB is this value, and if you do the simplification, finally we are going to get V0 by VI is equal to minus 1 plus SRC by 1 plus SRC. So in place of S I am going to substitute j omega. So then I am going to get, this is the equation I am going to get. So now I am going to convert the rectangular formats into polar formats for the numerator and also denominator. So ratio of output voltage by input voltage is called as the amount of closed loop gain. So ACL is equal to the magnitude value here under root over 1 plus omega RC whole square, and the angle value, the phase angle is 180 minus sin inverse of omega RC. But the down part, the magnitude value is 1 plus omega RC whole square, and the phase angle value is sin inverse of omega RC. So this magnitude parts are both are equal. So now it is a divided, so value is 1. So 1 at an angle of, if it goes upper part it become negative. So finally I am going to get 180 degree minus 2 into tan inverse of omega RC. So this is the closed loop voltage gain of this circuit, means the magnitude value is still 1, but it is going to give only phase shift, means whatever the input signal it is going to is does not changes the magnitude of the input signal, but it is only going to add the some amount of phase. So now here the frequencies can be from 0 to infinity. Then I am going to see what is the nature of the closed loop gain for all these frequency ranges. So same thing I have written, for omega changes from 0 to infinity, I want to know what is the variation of the ACL. So when omega is equal to 0, if you substitute here, we are going to get 1 at an angle of 180 degree. But if you substitute omega is equal to infinity here, we are going to get 1 at an angle of 0 degree. So we can say when omega is going to change from 0 to infinity, the phase angle is going to change from plus 1 degree to 0 degree. So we can say that if you draw the diagram of the magnitude and also phase with respect to omega, for all the frequency ranges the magnitude value is still 1, but the phase angle is going to change from 180 degree to plus 180 degree to 0 degree. So we can say this circuit, the second circuit is going to provide the positive phase shift, but the circuit 1 is going to provide the negative phase shift, and the circuit 2 is going to provide the positive phase shift. So therefore we can say circuit 1 is going to provide a phase shift of, we can say, minus 180 degree to 0 degree, and the circuit 2 is going to give a phase shift from plus 180 degree to 0 degree. So therefore we can say it can cover the plus positive phase shift and also negative phase shift. So therefore finally an all pass filter is going to provide a plus 180 degree phase shift to minus 180 degree phase shift. So it can cover all the positive phase and also negative phase. So basically an all pass filter is called as a, basically it is does not going to change the amplitude of the input signal, but it can only provide a phase shift. The phase shift can be either positive or negative, means from plus 180 to plus 0, or we can say 0, and from 0 to minus 180. It can provide all the positive phase shift and also negative phase shift to the input, but it doesn't going to change the magnitude of the input. So therefore we can say all pass filter will transfers all the frequency components of the inputs, but only thing is it is going to add only a small amount of phase. Either the phase can be positive or negative, so therefore it can cover all the phase range from plus 180 degree to minus 180 degree is the correct solution of this question. So by this lecture we have successfully completed the 80 questions. So we have completed all the questions of ISRO 2017 in a very detailed manner. So if you like the content of our channel, then please do like, share and subscribe our YouTube channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon button, so whenever you upload a new video, the direct notification comes on mobile. If any improvements in our lectures, then please do comment in the comment section. We will definitely include all those improvements in the coming lectures. Thank you so much for watching this lecture. Keep smiling, take care, and bye bye.